Welcome to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. We are two dads talking sports during nap times. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. For episode 6, we'll start out with the latest news on the Minnesota Wild, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Minnesota Twins. We will then dive into the NFL Scouting Combine and talk about the results. We will then share our top 5 NFL draft running back prospects. Enjoy the show. So, Zach, is there anything you'd like to say before we get started here?
No, episode 6 already, and this one's going to be a fun one because, my favorite time of the offseason is obviously the NFL draft, and the combine is huge. So, yeah, man, let's just jump right in this.
So, yeah, just starting off with the Minnesota Wild. So, since the last time we have talked, the Wild have gone 2-3 with wins against the Oilers and Kraken. The 3 losses are against the Hurricanes, Predators, and Blues yesterday. The Wild are actually playing right now as we speak versus the Sharks. So some of this data might be, or not data, but statistics might be different by the time this episode drops. But as of right now, the Wild are 10 points back of the 2 wild card spots being held by the Kings and Predators. They have 21 games left in the season. There's still time, but the hole is getting bigger. And as of right now, I just don't see them making the playoffs. We'll see what happens. But they've definitely kind of struggled here the last 5 games and dug themselves a hole. And the Predators are on, a 7-game win streak or something like that. So they've been really hot. In one of our losses was pretty bad versus them. I think we lost 6-1. We just did not have a really good showing that game.
Yeah, that's too bad. But, we talked about it earlier, too, with the contracts, with the Parise and Suter contracts. It kind of handcuffs them a little bit. So we kind of figured this season would be kind of a down one. But still, for them not to make the playoffs is still disappointing to say the least.
And just to talk a little further news on them, the trade deadline is coming up next Friday, March 8th. So I think the Wild will most likely at this point now be sellers than buyers. I don't think Billy G is going to go out and maybe trade a guy who's one of our top guys or anything like that.
Sure.
But they could maybe trade some guys, just a couple that come to my mind. That's Brandon Duhaime and Connor Dewar. There are talks that Duhaime could actually get a pretty good return. A lot of teams like him because they think he's built for the playoffs, and I agree. He's a pretty gritty player who isn't afraid to drop the gloves when called upon. So I think, that aspect adds that playoff hockey. And I think a lot of teams will be after him. And then this past week on February 28th, the Wild actually went out and signed that Russian prospect I mentioned.
Nice.
Marat. I'm not going to pronounce his last name because, he's Russian.
Yeah, those are tough.
A very tough last name to pronounce, but it starts with a K. I think it's like Kuznetsov or something like that.
Sure.
But yeah, so hopefully he'll be in the Wild lineup very soon. Right now, they're just waiting for him to get a work visa, so that's the one thing that is kind of delaying it. So yeah, hopefully here in March, we'll see him in a Wild sweater. And then one of our top prospects, actually, his name is Riley Haight, and he was drafted in the past draft in 2023, 64th overall in the second round. He's having a tremendous season playing in the Western Hockey League, which is part of the Canadian Hockey League, also known as the CHL.
Sure.
So that's one of the top junior leagues in the world. In 58 games played, he has 33 goals, 69 assists, and 102 points with a plus minus of 30. So plus minus means the plus minus is if you're on the ice when you're scored on, or you're out there when you're scoring too. So
sure.
That doesn't count for penalty kill or power play or nothing like that. So that plus minus of 30 is pretty impressive. But yeah, he's having a terrific year, and he's definitely an exciting prospect for the Wild.
Nice. That's awesome. Do you know how old he is?
Yeah, I think he's 19.
Jeez, what a stud.
So he was just 18 last year. So he's definitely, I think, one of those kids that were maybe thought of to be a late first round, second early second, mid-second round pick in that range, and he
Sure.
kind of fell to that last pick of the second round. And the Wild look like they have a steal right now.
Nice, that's huge, especially with them not making the playoffs this year, having a bunch of young prospects like that is huge for that organization.
Yeah, they should all be coming here pretty soon. I would imagine next 2 to 3 seasons. We'll see a lot of these guys get signed and hopefully have immediate impact to the Wild lineup.
Yeah, for sure, that's huge.
So yeah, Zach, leading into the Timberwolves. No, it's kind of been a tough last two games for them. Maybe you can speak on that a little more.
Yeah, so since the last time we talked, they're 2-2. They started off obviously 2-0. They beat the Spurs on Tuesday. Anthony Edwards had 34 points, and then they beat the Grizzlies again on Wednesday, and Ant went for 34. So back-to-back 34-point games for Ant. And then the last two games struggled a little bit, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They lost to the Kings in overtime. Ant did leave that game at halftime for the birth of his first child, so that was pretty cool. Hopefully, I haven't seen any pictures or anything, but hopefully, healthy baby and everything.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
Ant was back today against the Clippers, and I don't know what's going on with their offense, but just they're playing a lot of ISO ball. They're not really moving the ball that well, and they lost to the Clippers by one. The Timberwolves defense showed up again today, which I mean they've been so impressive all season. They're
Mhm.
actually on pace to have the best defense since the 2008 Boston Celtics. So, I mean, they're really all those guys. Rudy, Towns is playing the best defense of his career. You got guys like Nah off the bench who's dominating. You got like
Mhm.
guys like Jaden McDaniels. He's one of the better perimeter defenders in the entire league. And then obviously you got a guy like Rudy Gobert, who is probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year once again. So their defense showed up again today, only allowing 89 points against the Clippers, but they only scored 88. But just speaking on their offensive struggles, they shot 33 three-pointers today and only hit on 27% of them. So, I mean,
Jeez.
it was so frustrating to watch. Just no one had it today. I think Ant finished with 25 points, but he was the leading scorer. Everyone else, I mean, it was just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So, hopefully going forward, they can find their way offensively and get back in it because right now there's a three-way tie for the number one seed in the West between the Thunder, the Wolves, and the Nuggets. So, I mean, this is the time of the year where you got to keep your foot on the gas. You can't slow down because the West is super, super tight. And looking at this week ahead, they got the Blazers, the Pacers, the Cavs, and the Lakers. So, I mean,
Okay.
if they can go 3-1 out of the next four, obviously that'd be huge. And, a lot of those games are winnable. So we'll see what they can do, but they just got to keep the foot on the gas and hopefully make a strong push for these playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. That stretch coming up is very important. They can go 3-1, 4-0 in those games too. That'd be nice, or that'd be perfect to get a little back. But like you said, that West is tight. I just wanted to ask you, what did you think of the last play of the game today when Ants, they're down by 3. He decides to go into the paint, slam dunk it for 2 points. What did you think of that? There's like 3 seconds left on the clock. I thought he could have maybe taken a three just to try to tie it. And then I understand that they maybe were going for the foul, but that just didn't work out because they got the ball to Harden. Harden got away a little bit and then sent it down the floor. And then um, Kawhi Leonard just tipped the
Just
ball up
tipped
in
it
the
up.
arrow to bounds, basically. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to see what your thoughts were on that. Did you think he should have took the three, or do you agree with going for that 2 points?
No, and that's one of the things that was super surprising. I thought for sure that they would go for the three ball. They actually called a timeout right before that play. So I'm assuming that Finch would tell the guys, hey, we got to take a three here and design a play to
Yeah,
shoot the three ball. Obviously, the Clippers just let Anthony Edwards get that easy layup because that's exactly what they wanted, or the easy dunk. And that's what Ant took. But I mean, that's my biggest concern with the Timberwolves is the inexperience. They're so young.
yeah,
They haven't obviously won a playoff series in forever. So like these are the games when it comes playoff time, you're gonna have to shoot that three. You know, you can't.
Yep.
There's teams that are gonna outsmart you. The Clippers, out-coached Finch today. And maybe it wasn't Finch. If I had to guess, Finch told, designed the play for those guys to shoot a three. And Ant just being young,
Mhm.
obviously Ant is still super young, just
Yep.
thought he would go ahead and get a quick basket and go for that easy dunk. But at the end of the day, you got to shoot that three, and hopefully come playoff time to get that stuff dialed in because, um, like I said, my biggest concern with the Wolves is definitely their inexperience.
Yeah, it would be a huge bummer if they do not make it past the first round. I think they will, but man, that you know how the second round gets pretty tight in the playoffs because there's a lot usually it's pretty, four pretty solid teams. So I just, I didn't realize this. I kind of heard this a while back, but I just kind of want to bring this into this basketball conversation.
Yeah,
But a former golfer, Amir Coffey, he was a pretty big golfer back in, I don't know when, maybe mid 2010 ish, tens, maybe 2015, 2016, 2017, somewhere in that
yeah,
range. But it sounds like he's kind of made a little name for himself on the
on the
Clippers.
Clippers. Yep, yeah, he's a
Yeah,
guy that went on.
super cool.
Yeah, he's a guy that went undrafted. I think he's still got to be mid-20s. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, he has played really well. He's actually a really good defensive player for the Clippers too. So that is definitely cool to see.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, going back just to the Timberwolves real quick when it comes to the playoffs, I mean, the West is so tough. You're looking at just say the seventh seed right now is the Sacramento Kings. I don't
Mhm.
like that matchup against them in the playoffs. I really don't.
Dude, I believe well, I know I've watched us play them twice,
Yeah.
and we lost back in we could have played them before the or after this too, but I remember watching around Thanksgiving time, I wanna say, and, is it De'Aaron
De'Aaron
Fox?
Fox, yep.
Yeah, he
Stud.
went off in that game. We just couldn't guard him, and then the other game here, Malik
Yeah,
Monk,
he put
we
up
couldn't
39.
stop him.
Yeah, when you
Yeah,
got
he had
guys, yeah, yeah.
I think he had like 20 points in the fourth quarter or something like that. It was just crazy.
Yeah, and that's the one thing about the Kings, man. They can score with the best of them, and then they got Zambonis or Zabonis down low. I mean, he's an absolute dog, just getting boards, and that's one team that matches up really well against the Wolves. And then you look at teams like the Mavericks. The Mavericks made some good moves at the deadline to really improve their team. They're at the 8 seed right now, which would be tough. The team I'd probably
Mhm.
not want to play the most is the Suns. The Suns are the 6 seed right now. I would not want to play Durant, obviously Booker and those guys in the playoffs, especially with the inexperience that the Wolves have. And then you got
Yeah.
guys like the Warriors at the 9 seed. I mean, do you really want to play against? Honestly, that's probably the best team that
Mhm.
you would, or the team that matches up the best with the Wolves is the Warriors because of the Timberwolves size. But still, you don't want to play against Steph Curry in the playoffs. And then
No, not at
yeah,
all.
and then the 10 seed is the Lakers. Obviously LeBron and AD. That's a tough matchup too. So all I know is the Wolves got to keep their foot on the gas here, and they just got to go for that number one seed because it is absolutely huge when it comes to the Western Conference right now.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think there's like 21-ish
Yep,
games left in the season or something.
yep, for sure. And that's the thing. There's not many games left, but we'll see what happens, man. But it definitely that inexperience definitely makes me nervous. But switching it over to the Minnesota Twins, we got I think opening day is only like 20 or 20 some days away. So
It is a Buxton jersey number days away.
25. All
Current
right, dude,
as
that's
we record, yeah,
crazy.
25. So
That's crazy. Nice. So what's going on with the Twins?
yeah, just the spring training is well underway now at this point. This past week here, the Twins traded for outfield Manuel Margot. We gave up a middle infield prospect named Noah Miller, who was a Twins comp pick at number 36 back in 2021. In return, received Margot and an infield prospect named Rene Dancon, I want to say.
Sure.
He's out of Dominican Republic. He's 20 years old. So, yeah, a nice player to add to the Twins outfield. I think he'll be more of a platoon guy who could come in and maybe be an everyday player if
Hmm.
need be, but definitely a depth guy. I feel that center field will have Buxton, right field will have Kepler, and then left field will probably have Matt Wallner. So
Sure.
I would maybe think that Margot he'll see some time, but he's not going to be an everyday starter.
Yeah, and that's a really nice pickup, especially with the injury concerns that the Tim or not the Timberwolves, the Twins usually have. Kepler was hurt a little bit last year. Obviously Buxton with his injury concerns. So it's just nice having a guy, coming off the bench that you can plug in if need be.
For sure. And I just want to touch, I think it was Friday they played Boston and bases were loaded, and guess who was up to
Royce
bat?
Lewis,
And he hit a grand slam,
he is the
man.
man,
Every single
dude.
time he
He
hits a
is the
grand slam, I
man.
feel like when the bases are loaded. I don't know the stats behind that or the data behind that, but I would love to look it up to see, how many opportunities he's had with the bases loaded and how many grand slams he has hit. Because I know last year he
He had
had
a
like the
handful.
quickest.
He had a handful last year,
Yeah,
didn't he?
yeah, I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know he broke a record for like the most within a least amount of games or something like that.
That's insane.
I want to say he hit like 4 or 5 grand slams last year.
Yeah, yep.
I could be wrong,
I no,
but
I
I
think you're
know
right.
it was quite many. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm so excited to see him, and I hope he can just put together a full season because he's electric. I think he brings that attitude, and the players just love him. The clubhouse, you just saw it last year. As soon as he came in the lineup, they just had a
Completely
spark.
different. Yep, exactly.
I think he has that dog mentality, and he has that it factor for sure. So I'm very excited to see the Twins can put together another great year. We'll see how the pitching holds up this year. That obviously lost Sonny Gray,
Yep.
so that was a big loss. But I'm hoping that these guys can step up and um, they just continue to build upon last year.
Yeah, for sure. And I totally anticipate the Twins, really pushing for another playoff appearance this year because they got a young team, but man, that team is so fun to watch. And the big thing is health. If they stay healthy, I mean, they're gonna surprise a lot of people this year with their record because they got a lot of good players on that team. They really do.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, moving into, this past week was just an absolute joy, and that's because the NFL Combine. Um, just sitting down, watching these players that you've seen in college, just kind of seeing them now, you know, do the on-field work, run the 40s, do the vert jump, broad jump, just to see all those measurables. Obviously, the combine just a small picture of the whole draft. It's just another data point. So we can't go away fully with how these guys did there, but it does say things. And I feel like some guys definitely have locked themselves into the first round who may have not been thought of first round guys before. So Zach, just starting off, day one was the D line. So we got to see the D tackles, the edge rushers, and then we also got to see the linebackers. So who are your standouts?
So there was honestly so many guys, and just kind of
I
talking
know.
about the combine just real quick in this draft class, man. This draft class is awesome. When we're talking about, obviously, we're going to talk about every position here, but the receivers, the offensive linemen, I mean, we got some athletic freaks on the D line. I
Definitely.
mean, it is an absolute killer draft, and I really,
I
really love this class. I do.
I remember you saying last draft how this next year's draft is pretty loaded, and man, it sure is loaded because we saw a lot of great things happen over this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And that's another thing is like I never try to jump too far ahead when it comes to getting excited about prospects and stuff. But even last year, I did talk a lot about this upcoming draft and just guys with like Caleb Williams. We knew how special he was, and yeah, and now that this draft class is finally here and we got to see it, this weekend on full display. I mean, it's going to be so fun to dissect this draft class and really get into it. But just talking about some winners on day one. Let's start with Peyton Wilson, linebacker at NC State. I mean, I
Mhm.
kind of talked about Edgerrin Cooper in the last draft, and I thought that he was going to lock
Yep.
himself into that number one linebacker position. And
Yeah.
Cooper had a good combine. He really did. He ran a 4.51, which I mean
Mhm.
that totally shows on tape. He's a sideline to sideline guy. But when you see Peyton Wilson do the drills and just how fluid he is, and then he goes out and runs a 4.43 40,
Yeah, that was nuts.
I was like, dude, I was not expecting him to run like that. And then he puts up
Yeah,
a
me either.
1.54 10-yard split. So I mean, he can just move.
Yep.
So that's one guy that
Yeah.
I really have to go back and watch some of his games because last season I
Hmm.
didn't watch any NC State games. I don't remember the last
Yeah.
time I watched an NC State game. It's been a long time. So I'm gonna have to go back and watch him. But from everything that I'm seeing, it looks like, right now he's linebacker one. So that 4-4-40 really, really helped him out. Um, God, there's just so many guys. Now let's kind of one guy I was really disappointed that didn't participate was Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I thought he really
Yeah, for
could have
sure.
helped his case by just competing with these guys because, like I said, there isn't a clear-cut number one guy. So I feel like you would want to compete as much as possible. But I mean, he didn't test at all. He didn't do his vert. He didn't do the broad. He didn't do the 40. I don't even think he benched. So that was a huge disappointment. But I'm gonna just go ahead and jump into the edge rushers because we have a bunch of dogs at edge rusher
Yeah,
this
let's
year.
talk about them for sure.
So, actually, do you want to do you want to, mention anyone at the
Do
linebacker position?
linebackers?
Yeah, yeah, just so I don't
Yeah,
get
no,
too
I was
far
just
ahead.
gonna yeah, I was gonna mention Wilson too, how he ran that 4.43,
Yeah,
and like you said, he's very athletic, 6'4", 233 pounds too, so he was moving.
yep,
That Cooper though, I think he still had a pretty solid day. His measurable 6'2", 230. He had the 1.54 or 1 second 54 hundredths and 54 hundredths of a for the 10-yard split, and his 40 is a 4.51.
yep,
His vertical is 34.5 inches,
mhm,
and his broad was 9 feet 10 inches. So I think he still had a pretty good day, but
yep,
Peyton Wilson definitely was the guy that, like you said, I think he cemented himself as that potential number one linebacker, and I'll have to go back and watch him too because I haven't watched NC State as much either. One guy I was kind of disappointed who also didn't participate at linebacker, and I don't know if he's hurt or anything like that. So if he is, I understand,
yeah,
but it's Junior Colson out of Michigan. I was really looking forward to seeing what he would do, and he didn't participate in any of the at least any of the measurable things like the 10-yard split, 40-yard dash, vertical or broad. And I don't think I saw him out there on the field too during the workouts.
yeah, and that's
Did you see him?
no, I didn't either. So I don't know, and that's the
Yeah.
thing I should have
Okay.
looked up. I don't know if he was hurt or not, but that's another guy that
Yeah.
he flies. That guy
Yeah,
flies.
definitely.
So I mean,
He was probably my number one guy going into this. And then,
yep, and I feel like
you
if he
know,
was healthy and he ran, he would probably be in that 4-4 range. So that's a guy that probably would have really helped his stock because on
yeah,
watching Michigan games, that kid absolutely flies. So I'm assuming that he's hurt, but
yeah.
we'll
I
definitely have to
wonder,
look
yeah, he
into that and
must
see.
be
But either way,
for
man, that
sure.
Michigan Pro Day with all the studs that they got, man, is that gonna be fun to watch.
Definitely.
But yeah, so let's jumping into the defensive linemen. I mean, let's start with Dallas Turner. I was not I was not expecting that at all. I
Dude, I told you, man. Like, I know you're talking Chop Robinson. Okay, he had a tremendous day too. But like I said before, Dallas Turner is the most athletic of those edge rushers in this draft, and he showed it for sure,
yeah, he's such a freak. What so
dude.
just talking about the Vikes just real quick. If
Yeah.
they
Yep.
if they don't go quarterback at 11
Yep.
and say they
Hmm.
go pass rusher, I think in our mock, no, you didn't in our mock. I know you talked a little bit about
Yeah, I took
Verse, Jared Verse.
I took J yeah, I took JJ in my
Yep.
mock. Say if the Vikes do bring back Kirk, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
You know, if we might as well just talk about it real quick.
Yeah, just
Watching the KOC interview yesterday, the Vikes understand that Kirk has a right to be a free agent and he's earned that right. And he's going to be testing the market. The thing is that kind of throws me off a little bit is if they don't get an extension done before the new league year starts on March 13th at 3 Central Time, that 29, $28 million void, something like that, becomes official.
yep.
So if we were to even sign him still, that void's still going to be a part of that no matter what. So having them say that Kurt's going to go test the waters, I don't feel like he's coming back.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yep, I don't think so either.
So saying that, I do think the Vikes will probably stick with a quarterback.
Yeah.
If for some reason they are not able to maybe move down and acquire a quarterback, There's talks now that JJ McCarthy could go top 10.
Hmm.
You know, you never know if Michael Penix Jr., based on his day he had, we'll talk about that more later. So, but if they weren't going edge rusher, definitely Dallas Turner would be one of my favorite guys. If Atlanta, though, does take, say they go and sign Cousins, which is the big talk right now,
Yep.
um, I think Turner would probably go there because they need that edge help.
Yep.
So maybe we looking more guys like Jared Verse or maybe even Byron Murphy, who we can talk about too. Byron Murphy the second, a D tackle of Texas, could be a guy at that spot.
Yeah, he looked like a freak too. But yeah, going back to Dallas Turner, I mean, when he ran that 4.46, man, I was not expecting that. I know he was quick, but
Yeah.
I was not thinking 4.4 quick. So the fact that he actually ran faster than Chop Robinson, Chop ran a 4.48, so I mean Turner was just a little bit faster, but I was not
His
expecting that
vert
one.
though, dude.
Yeah, and his vert was
His vert
40 and
was
a half.
40 and a half
Yeah.
inches. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Just an absolute freak. And the thing is when you watch his highlights, I mean, it really shows. I thought Chop was going to really rise, but if you're comparing Dallas Turner to Chop, especially with that Dallas Turner speed, I mean, he is so far
yeah.
ahead of where Chop Robinson is when it comes to prospect that I mean,
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to not see Dallas Turner going top 10 in this draft, like you were just saying. So he had a
Hmm.
absolute huge day. Like I said, Chop Robinson did pretty much what I was expecting him to do. You know, 4.48's really, really good. That's freaking fast
Yep.
for a guy that's 250 pounds, you know.
Oh, for sure.
So
And his 10-yard split was the same as Turner. It was a 154. So they
154, yep.
both have that quick, quick jump from the get go.
Yep, yep. The
So they
thing
do have that.
Yep, for sure. It's just the team that takes him. You know, Chop is going to be a first round pick for sure. It's just the team that
Oh,
picks him.
definitely.
It's going to be they're just going to have to work on his pass rushing moves just a little bit. But I was definitely he pretty much did what I was anticipating him to do. Um, one guy that I wrote down that I really liked is Muhammad Kamara from Colorado State. Now, I only watched one Colorado State game last year, and that was the game against Colorado where they went in that double
Yep.
overtime. And
Hmm.
that Kamara on defense, he was the best player, arguably, on the entire field. And
He was.
dude, he was unbelievable. And then I kind of forgot about him. And then watching him at the
Hmm.
combine, he ran a 4.57, which is
Yep.
super quick. You know, that's another guy with his 10-yard split was a 1.58. And last year at Colorado State, he had 13 sacks. So now this is a
Yeah.
guy that you can maybe get day 2, day 3 that you know, maybe as a rookie, he's just a third down pass rusher. But I think if you work on him, he has all the tools to be everyday starter on defense and an absolute steal in the draft.
For sure. I have him actually down on my list as well. Some guys surprised me too. And Daniel Jeremiah kind of touched on some things that he looks at. Daniel Jeremiah is one of the probably my favorite
My
draft and
favorite too,
out or
100%.
yeah, analysts for the NFL Network.
Yep.
But he was saying like some certain measures they look for. So I believe it was a top 10 sack producers in the NFL last year.
Hmm.
Their measurables for like the 40 for edge was a 4.65 and a 4.62 for let's just go back. It was just a 4.65 for edge and it was a 4.62 for off ball linebackers.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, those guys are definitely in that category. Guys who could potentially, based on their 40 time, could if they develop and continue, those guys could be guys that could be maybe top 10 sack getters and average when they're getting a little older. So
Yeah, for sure. I just think he's gonna be an absolute steal. I mean, yeah, he's 6'3" or 6'4", 245 pounds. I didn't write his height down, but he's just a big dude and he just gets to the quarterback. So he was really impressive. Um, Another guy, Jared Verse. I wasn't expecting him. I thought he was like a 4.6 guy because obviously he's probably the
yeah,
best power pass rusher in this entire
yeah.
draft.
Oh, he's
He is
definitely
just
the best
an
power rusher.
yeah, but he just mauls you, just bull rushes you and knocks you over. But dude, he ran a
Yep.
4.58. Now that was way faster than I was
Yeah.
anticipating. I don't know what's going on with these defensive ends nowadays, dude, but they're running like, I mean, these are wide receiver times, dude. This is insane.
Yeah. And just speaking on that power, he put up the most for the bench for 225 bench press, and that was 31 reps.
31 reps, and he runs a 4.5. Come on.
And that was more than some of those big D tackles. I didn't see the top guy, but the top guy on my list was Chris Jenkins, and he put up 29 on the 225
Dude,
or 29 reps on the bench press there at 225. So yeah, man, that's some freaky numbers there,
dude,
and
absolute dog.
he's he's another guy who I would love if the Vikings did take an edge would be Jared Verse for sure.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man, with all these quarterbacks, and I think we're going to see these receivers. There's probably going to be four quarterbacks and three receivers going in the first, so many picks, where a lot of these defensive studs are going to fall right in the laps of the Minnesota Vikings at 11 and the Las Vegas Raiders at 13. So this is a great year if you're really looking to bulk up that defense, because a lot of these guys are going to fall right in their laps.
I agree. One guy that kind of maybe disappointed me a little bit because I thought he was maybe a little quicker. I think he's gonna be maybe. I think I talked about this about potentially being more of a kind of three technique pass rusher that can come in the middle, but also on the edge, and that's Darius Robinson on Missouri.
Yeah.
His 40 was a 4.95,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
wasn't very quick. And some of those other D tackles who I'm going to mention, we'll talk about next, ran quicker 40s than he does. So I don't know if he's going to move in. I mean, he is at 285. He's 6'5", 285. So in comparison, some of those guys like Turner's he's 247, Robinson's 254 versus 254. So he definitely has about 30 pounds on them.
Yep.
So I wonder if he'll maybe more go inside and play on the interior of the D line versus on the outside.
Yeah. And I kind of wrote him down too, and he only had 21 bench reps, which I didn't think was too impressive for his size. I thought
Yeah,
overall, I mean, he was probably the biggest loser of day one. I don't know
yeah,
if,
for
yeah,
sure.
I don't think if I had to predict right now, I don't think he's a first round pick. I really don't.
No, yeah, I think he's gonna fall out now. We'll see if he can maybe put up more or better numbers if he does his pro day.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe he was a little hurt, but I don't think he was.
Yeah.
They didn't mention it or nothing like that, and he didn't seem like he was limping around out there on the field.
Yeah. That's one guy that's going to really have to have a nice pro day to kind of get himself back in that day one conversation for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Well, moving on to the D tackles now, Zach, do you want to talk about who was a couple guys that kind of shocked you, or not shocked you, but that you're impressed with
I'm gonna start with the number one guy in this entire draft is Byron Murphy. What an
for
absolute
sure?
freak, dude. What an absolute freak. For how big he is, over 300 pounds, runs a 4.8. I wasn't expecting that. And
No,
and it shows, dude. If you just watch his film, his explosiveness off the line of scrimmage is probably second to none when it comes to defensive tackles. And the dude is super strong too. I mean, he absolutely solidified himself as a top 15 pick in this draft.
I agree. Yeah, I think he's a lock now for the top 15.
Yep. How about you? Who did you got written down?
So one guy that really, I know you're really high on him. I just want to talk about this player first, and then I'll talk about my guy.
Sure.
And that's Sweat out of
Yeah.
Texas.
Yep.
Obviously he's big dude, 6'4.5", 366 pounds.
Yeah.
So he ran a 5.27, which isn't too bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But his 10-yard split was pretty slow, and that was a 1.8.
Yep.
So I think he's going to be a guy in the middle, but I don't know if he's going to be a first round pick. I think he
Yep.
might be more of, if he is a first round pick, it might be later in the first round and probably like second to mid second. But I think, you look at some of these other guys, Byron Murphy, as you mentioned, and the player I'm about to mention, Braden Fiske out of Florida
Man,
State.
he put on a show.
Yeah, he did. 6'4", 292. He had a 1.68 10-yard split, which was a hundredth of a second better than Byron Murphy, and he ran a 4.78 40.
Yeah.
His vert was 33.5, and his broad was 9 feet 9 inches, and he put up 26 reps on the bench.
Yeah. And if you go back and watch his film, dude, it shows. It really shows, dude.
Mm-hmm.
His last game of the season, I think it was against Louisville, dude. He dominated that game. Dominated that game. So that's a guy.
Yeah,
Now I don't know, was that combine good enough to get him in the first round? Probably
uh,
was, but I don't know.
might.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I still think, he had a really good Senior Bowl
He did,
too,
exactly, yep.
and so his whole process has been
He's been
very
killing it.
excellent.
Yeah.
I think he's probably going to be more of a lock for like early second, maybe around a pick that the Vikings could be taken in the second round too.
What a nice pick that
Um,
would be.
he would be a nice guy in that, you know, 11th. I don't know if they're picking 11th or 12th in the second round, but um, he would be a really nice guy to get, and we'll see if he can maybe move up to the end of the first round. So we'll just you also got to remember, like, teams, they go in and interview these guys and they kind of learn a little more about them too. And maybe there's a team that likes him and just want to get him on their roster and they take that shot in the first. So, but he's definitely a guy I'm going to look for to see where he ends up.
Yeah, oh yeah. And another thing, going back to the interviews, so I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to just the player interviews. And
Mm-hmm.
going back to Tavondre Sweat, dude, I really, really liked his interview. He seemed like a super nice kid. He was super funny. Seemed like he was just a dog. Now, I agree with you. I don't think he's a first round pick. Um, I go back to like a Terrence Cody. I don't know if you remember him. He's from Alabama and got drafted in the first round late to the Ravens. I think he was
Okay.
like 360 some pounds too, so he was a big plug. But he kind of
Yeah.
fizzled out and didn't really do much in the NFL. So I think teams will kind of be concerned with kind of comparing him to Sweat because we don't see
Mm-hmm.
big defensive tackles like that in the NFL. I mean, Sweat is what 300. What'd you say he was? 370?
366.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that's freaking massive. So, and now that's a
Yeah,
guy
it's
that,
huge.
is only going to play on first and second down. He's not going to be on the field on third downs rushing the passer at that weight. I mean, at least not as a rookie, I don't think. So,
No, I don't think so either.
yeah, so that would be a little too rich for me to take him in the first round. I do like that player a lot, but I do agree with you. He's probably a day two guy and a guy that, man, I would like for the Raiders in round two. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be that guy that can come in there and plug up the middle and make a huge difference in the run game. But like you said, he's going to be more of a maybe two down guy, not on third downs or nothing like that when it's more maybe pass. But we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. Teams always surprise us in the first round. Guys that we think that aren't going to go in the first round go in the first round. So, yeah, he's definitely a guy. Another guy who didn't participate because I think he is injured, and that was, he changed. He wants to go by Johnny now, so Johnny Newton out of Illinois.
Yep.
He was probably my number one interior guy, but now just over the process with Byron Murphy II, he took that spot for me for sure. So that'll be later on in other episodes. We'll go through and rank our D tackles
Yep.
in this draft, but I think he's the guy that could have hurt his status. I do think he's still going to go first round, but he might not go as early as we thought.
Yeah, and I think his size is really gonna hurt him too. He's shorter, but obviously like Aaron Donald's shorter too. So maybe they kind of compare him
Mm-hmm.
to that because Newton is a really good pass rusher
Yeah,
from that D-tack position. So we'll see, but he's definitely gonna have to have a good pro day because I do agree with you that I do feel like his stock dropped a little bit because these other guys kind of rised up.
for sure. Well, moving on to the D backs. Who was the guy that kind of jumped out the most for you on day two for the D backs?
So I think he's clear cut number one cornerback in this draft now, and that's Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback from
Mm-hmm.
Toledo. I was really curious to see what his 40 time was. He looked like he was really fast, but when he
Yep.
went out there and put a 4.33 up, I was like, dude, what? Like that's
Yeah,
that's
he flew.
insane, dude. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds. He almost had a 40-inch vertical, and he put up 20 bench reps at 225 pounds. And we just talked about a
Yeah.
defensive tackle in Robinson who put up 21. So I mean
Yeah,
Mitchell,
that's
yeah, I mean Mitchell at 195 pounds put up
oh
20.
man. I didn't
So
even think of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
dude. So
He's
I
195 pounds, 100 pounds more than Robinson. He only benched one more than him.
yeah, dude,
Wow.
it's insane. So Mitchell absolutely dominated the combine for me. This cornerback class is kind of funny. Like looking before this past college football season even started, I always
Hmm.
look at early mock drafts and everyone had either Kool-Aid McKinstry as the for
Yeah.
sure number one corner or Kalen King from Penn State as like the
Yeah.
number one, number two. And now we're talking, is Kool-Aid McKinstry even a top 5 guy now? And is Kalen King
Hmm.
even a top 10 corner in this draft? So it's really crazy how one season can affect so much. But Quinyon Mitchell, I fully anticipate him being the number one cornerback off the board. I think he's going to go a lot higher than people anticipate. I really do think he's a top 10 pick. Now, I would have to kind of break it down because we're going to see those quarterbacks go early. We're going to see those receivers go. So where does he fit in there? But I don't know,
Yeah.
man. He has everything. And then if you see him catching the ball, dude, he looks like a receiver out there catching the ball. So
Yeah.
he is absolutely spectacular. But who do you got? Who'd you have as your big day one winner?
Yeah, so I'll talk about Nate Wiggins out of
Yes,
Clemson. He
love
went
it.
out there and flew. So obviously he's 6'1", 173, so you could probably put a little more weight to his frame because he is pretty lanky and skinny. But he ran a 4.28. He was the fastest. I believe he had the fastest 40 time out of all the D-backs. 36-inch vert, 10.7 broad jump,
That's
which I thought was
insane.
pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's insane.
But another guy who I think um who even surprised me more than Wiggins, and that was Max Melton out of
I
Rutgers.
love it. Yep.
So he's 5'11", 187. He ran a 4.39. He had a 40 half-inch vertical and
Insane.
11.4 broad jump, which is just crazy.
Yeah,
So
that's insane.
I think his brother's Bull Melton, wide receiver. I can't remember who he plays for, but I know he's in the NFL as well.
Really? Okay. That's cool. I didn't know that. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So that's his brother. But
Nice. That's sweet. But yeah,
so
that
moving on.
no, I
Oh,
just
go
just
ahead.
real quick that Nate Wiggins, that 4.28 man, he looks the part. I texted you this, but he kind of reminds me of Antonio Cromartie a little bit, and that's another guy,
Okay.
that just looks really fluid catching the ball. So with the 4.28 speed, I mean, he might be getting a lot of interceptions at the next level, Nate Wiggins. So
For sure. And then yeah, out of the safeties, I was going to talk about who was, I think we'll probably say the same guy, and I thought Tyler Nubin was the clear best
yeah,
front runner for the safeties out there.
yeah, and when it's all said and done, I don't know if we're gonna do like an overall player ranking before draft comes out, but he's a top 15 player for me. He really is. He watching his or listening to his interview and stuff, dude, he is so impressive. He's super smart. The big thing for me is I want to know like how aggressive, like what kind of dog you are. He's an absolute dog. So I like him a
Yeah.
lot. I think he can do everything that you ask for, at the safety position in the next level. He can play all over the field. He's really good in man coverage, zone coverage. He come down uh, to the line of scrimmage and thump guys. So I liked him. Obviously, he's by far the number one safety in my book, and he's a top 15 player for me. But he's probably not going to go that high. But he should be a day one selection all day long.
Yeah, if he's not a day one guy, I'll be surprised. He's definitely deserving of that top safety position. So,
Yep,
just that guys who were kind of maybe thinking that Cameron Kinchins was going to be the
man,
top
he
guy. He ran a
disappointed.
4.65. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was very disappointing.
he
So I
disappointed.
think he hurt himself.
Yeah, and I had him as the second best safety. I probably still do, just because he was an All-American in 2022. He's still a really good football player, but I thought the Kitchens and the Nubin, it was a little closer, but after the combine, I mean Nubin is so far ahead of everyone else that it's kind of Nubin and then you know a completely different tier. So
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. I think we have to mention too before we move on to the tight ends and go into um the late day two or yeah, later on in the combine with day two. But that's Tyler Owens, safety out of Texas Tech. I just want to say that he had a 41-inch vertical and a 12-foot 2-inch broad jump. So that was impressive numbers that he put up.
yeah, I was not expecting that. That's another guy I definitely have to go back and watch because I didn't watch any Texas Tech games this past season. But dude, a 12.2 broad jump, I mean, what the heck?
Yeah,
That's not even
yeah, it's
realistic, dude.
insane.
So an absolute
uh,
freak, like you said. I definitely got to go back and see if that translates to on the football field. I'm sure it does. But
yeah,
definitely a name that everyone listening to this podcast should definitely keep an eye on because I think he's gonna go a lot higher than people are anticipating.
For sure, for sure. And I do want to just jump in there real quick. And, those guys benching 225
Oh,
that Robinson put up 21
dude,
reps. That's still a
that's
lot.
insane.
I know I could not even become close to that.
Yeah.
So golf clap to him on that
Yeah,
because let's
exactly.
be honest, that's still pretty impressive. But what these guys are all these athletic monsters and just really great players, you just kind of expect a little more of him. So,
Exactly. Well, and like you were saying, I can't bench 225 once. So I'm here talking smack about a guy that did it 21 times. I mean,
uh,
let's be real here.
yeah, for sure. So later in the day on Friday, the tight ends went after the D backs. And man, I'm just, obviously Brock Bowers is just a clear cut number one tight end above everyone else. And it's just a landslide. Like he is elite, an elite tight end. Um, he didn't participate at all during any of the on-field workouts, didn't run at all. So I was a little disappointed in that. I want to see some of those measurables. Hopefully he does at the pro day, but he probably doesn't even need to if he doesn't want to, because I think he's still gonna be a first round pick no matter what.
Yeah. Yep.
But the one guy that I really like, and it really showed on the on-field workouts too, and that is Theo Johnson, tight
Yeah.
end
Yeah.
out of Penn State.
Yes. Yeah, for
So he's
sure.
6'6", 259. His 10-yard split was 155, and his 40 was a 457. Then he had a vertical of 39 and a half or 39.5 inch vertical and a 10-foot 5-inch broad jump. So I definitely thought he was the guy that um had his stock rise the most out of this tight end class.
Yeah. Yep. And the thing is I think this tight end class is pretty weak, comparing it to years
Yeah, for
past.
sure.
You really have Brock Bowers and then a bunch of guys that are probably going to be,
Yep.
maybe late day 2, day 3 type of guys. One guy that I really kept an eye on was that Beverin Spanford from Minnesota.
Yeah.
I was really hoping
Yep.
that he was going to be a little more freaky than what he was. He ran a
Hmm.
4.77, which is, still a decent time, but
Yeah.
just watching his highlights, I thought he was a little more athletic than that, but we'll see where he goes in the draft. Another thing on Brock Bowers is I heard that, now take this with a grain of salt because I'm just on Twitter looking at this stuff, but I heard that
Yeah.
he didn't interview very well with teams. So we'll see
Okay.
if that plays any effect on his draft stock. I mean, you put on the film and watch him play, he's obviously the clear-cut number one guy at tight end. And
Hmm.
he's deserving to be a top 10 pick all day long. We'll see how much a team like the Chargers fall in love with him, because I think that's probably as early as that he could go is pick
For
5.
sure.
So we'll see what happens, but I still anticipate him being a top 15 pick when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I definitely think he'll be a top tight end in the league too. I mean,
Yeah.
not number one, but definitely in the top 10.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, no doubt about it.
well, yeah, moving on to the running back position. So, if you've listened to episode 5, we all gave or Zach and I gave 3 players each who could, maybe light up the combine and see your stock rise. And one of the guys on my list did not disappoint, and that's Jalen Wright from Tennessee, the running back. He ended up running a 4.38 40, had a 30-inch vertical and 11-foot 2-inch broad jump.
Yeah.
So he definitely showed out that he is just an athletic freak. I mean, he's 5'10" and weighs 210 pounds. So that's
That's good
pretty
size.
impressive numbers.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it
good
is good
size.
size
Yep, that's
for
really good
sure.
size. And and
So,
and you look at his stats. I mean, he ran over 1,000 yards last year, and we brought it up before. He had a 7.4 average, so an
yep,
absolute dog. And the
definitely.
segment after this, we're going to be talking about our top 5 running backs in this draft class, each of us. And um, spoiler alert, he's in my top 5. So
Yeah, he's in my top 5. We'll see if he's up there towards the top for me. So,
yeah, yep.
which running back were you impressed with or kind of shocked you here?
Trey Benson out of Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
Just watching him, I didn't know what he was gonna run. Dude, I'm not even kidding you. I honestly thought that he was gonna be like close to a 4.5 guy. So
Okay.
the fact that he went out there and ran a 4.39 really
Yeah.
surprised me. And then, obviously we're gonna talk about this running back class a little bit more in a little bit, but there isn't a clear cut number one guy in my opinion. So these
Mm-mm.
pro days and these combine numbers are really going to play a huge role in where these guys go because it's kind of pick your poison. Do you want the slasher, the speed slasher, or do you want the power back? So a guy like Trey Benson really impressed me, and I think he really hurt or not hurt. He really helped his stock
Yeah.
during the combine.
Yeah, I definitely think we're gonna see. I don't know if we'll see a first round running back,
Yeah,
but I think we're gonna
agreed.
see a lot of running backs go in the second, third, fourth
Yeah,
rounds.
absolutely.
Some top guys. So, yeah, definitely, definitely kind of an impressive class there at the running back position. Maybe more so emerging than I thought. I thought it was maybe gonna be a little weaker of a class, but now seeing some of these guys, I think I'm changing my mind on that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're going to get a lot of guys in, like you just said, the middle to late rounds where honestly they could be day one starters. So I think that's how deep this running. There isn't that clear cut like a Bijan Robinson, but a lot of these guys can start day one for you, even in the later rounds. So overall, I really like this running back class.
So moving on now to the wide receiver position, man,
Dude,
this position, these guys, I have like a list of 15 dudes on here that we could talk about
dude,
because this was these dudes were just the most impressive. They might be the most impressive wide receiver class I've seen. Like that's pretty bold to say, but
yeah.
gosh, they're loaded. This class is loaded with talent.
Yep. And we can go back and talk about like the Justin Jefferson draft with like CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs,
Yeah,
a lot of those guys. That was a really good wide receiver class. I think this class is better. This is the best wide receiver class I've ever seen. I've been following the draft for 20 years, really closely. This is the best wide receiver class I've ever seen. You can get guys day 3 that will be day 1 starters for you.
yeah, for sure.
It's deep, man. It is so deep.
So who was your guy that surprised you watching the wide receivers run?
There were so many guys, but the guy that stood out the most, without going with the obvious choice, was A.D. Mitchell from Texas. He was a
Mhm.
guy for me that was borderline a first round pick. He's 6'2", 205 pounds, great size. If you look at him at Texas this past season, he really, really looks like a number one receiver. And then he goes out
Yeah,
there and runs a 4.34. And
yeah, that was impressive.
I was like, all right, that's enough for me to put him in the first round. So I think from every mock that I do from here on out, he's going to be a first round pick for me. And he absolutely, I mean, even doing the drills, he stole the show. I thought he was so impressive. But who is
Yeah,
your guy that stole
I
the show
agree.
for you?
Man, it's hard not to mention Xavier Worthy
Yeah,
because he ran the fastest
yeah,
40
ever,
ever
ever.
in NFL Combine history, and that was a 4.21.
Yeah.
Beat John Ross, who ran a 4.22.
And the
But
thing,
going,
and
oh, go ahead.
just real quick on him. Now he's not a guy like a Dre Archer or a John Ross. Like Xavier Worthy can play football. He's just not a track guy. Like this is a guy that can return punts, return kicks. He can line up outside, inside. He's a above average route runner. This guy's a first round pick. I think in our first mock I had him going 32 to the Chiefs. I think
Yeah, he did.
I think he's going to go a lot higher than that now. I think his absolute floor is the Cowboys in the mid 20s. I don't think the Cowboys let a guy like that go past them, be able to stretch the field like that. So we're going to see
Yeah,
him
keep
go.
him in Texas too.
Yeah, exactly. Keep him in Texas. I think that Cowboy fans would really like that pick. But talking about all these receivers that really helped their stock, I mean, he was probably the number one guy with that 40, man. That was
Yeah,
insane. Insane.
I think he went in there and he cemented himself in the first round.
Yep.
And I think like if he doesn't go first round, that's gonna be pretty wild because John Ross went round one after he ran that 4.22.
Yep. And he's not
So yeah, I
half the
think
player
he's
that
cemented.
Xavier is.
No, not at all.
Yep.
So one guy that who has really been starting to emerge for me, I don't think maybe he could like maybe he could find himself in that later first round, maybe to the Chiefs at 32, and that's Lad McConkey out of Georgia.
Yeah.
So he's 6 foot, 186, 186 pounds. He had a 1.52 10-yard split. His 40 time was impressive. I didn't think he was going to run that fast, but he ran a 4.39. He had a 36-inch vertical and a 10-foot 4-inch broad jump. But man, he is such a great and I think a polished route runner. So I think he's going to be a guy that's probably get more so, maybe late first, but for sure in the second round.
Yep.
And he's going to be I think he's going to be absolute steal.
Yeah, has there out of all these guys, I think he might be the guy that's helped his case the most since the season ended. I mean, he went to the
Yeah,
Senior Bowl, absolutely put on a show. People were oohing and on over him. Then he goes to the combine, and like you said, I was not expecting him to run a 4.3 at all. He goes out
for
there and
sure.
runs a 4.3, and I'm like, dude, this, I mean, is he the next Cooper Kupp? Like, teams are going to fall in love
Yeah,
with him, and I would hate for the Chiefs to get a guy like that because I think he would absolutely dominate in that offense. But I think that's a great landing spot for him. I really do.
for sure. And another guy that really impressed me was Ricky Pearsall out of
Yeah.
Florida.
Yep.
I haven't really seen many of his games. I've seen some Florida games, and you notice him out there. But
Yeah.
gosh, he ran a 4.41, had a 42-inch vertical, and a 10 inch or 10 foot 9 inch broad jump.
Yeah.
But he's another guy that's just his route running ability is so crisp, and you watch him get. You go back and watch some of his tape, and he gets the ball in his hands and he just goes. And also, he goes up for those contested catches and usually comes down with it. So he's a guy who's emerging for me in this wide receiver class.
Yeah. And for you guys that haven't seen that one-handed catch that he had, I mean, that might be the best catch that you ever see.
Yeah,
That,
for sure.
that was insane. But
Next to JJ's Buffalo Bills catch, but
oh yeah, that's yeah, dude, for sure. And honestly, I'm not even kidding you. That honestly might be the best catch that I've ever seen. With
yeah,
the circumstance of that being fourth down, it needed to happen. They obviously won the game. Dude, that was,
yeah,
oh my God, that catch was stupid.
that game was
Stupid.
awesome, man.
Yeah, it really was.
Remember, I just jumped off my couch and almost probably broke my ankle because I was so excited. But
uh, but yeah, dude, just
well, hey, let's do a little experiment here real quick, right?
okay. Yeah.
So I'm gonna give off some guys. Okay,
Okay.
I want you to tell me first round or second round. Okay, or first round or just not. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it. That'll be fun.
Okay, obviously we know the top three: Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze. Um, we all know they're going first round, right?
Yeah.
You said Adion Mitchell, you think is gonna go first round.
Yep.
Xavier Worthy, gonna go first round. Okay, Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU, ran a 4.33 40, so he was also impressive too.
Yep. He's
Do you
going
think
one.
he's a first round pick?
I
Okay.
do. And I honestly, I think that he's going to surprise a lot of people where he goes. I think he's top 20. I think he goes in the top 20.
Yeah, for sure. Keon Coleman out of FSU.
No, I don't. I think
Okay.
he ran a 4.61. I think that's going to hurt him just a little bit, but he's going to be a steal. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, he might even be like a late two because there's so many receivers that are they ran so fast that he might be forgotten about and slip a little bit. He's going to be an absolute steal. He's what 6'4", 215 whatever pounds. That
hmm
4.6 was a little slower than I thought he was going to run, but if you just watch him play, him and Jordan Travis absolutely dominated. He's a big red zone target. I love him a lot, and I do think that I don't think that he'll be a first round pick, but I do think that he'll be an absolute stud in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Xavier Leggett, South Carolina. He was your guy on your list. He did run a 4.39 and had a 40-inch vertical, which was pretty impressive. So he did definitely helped himself.
Yeah, he did. I kind of compared him to DK Metcalf. Metcalf ran a 4.33. He ran a 4.39. Thought he was going to run a little faster, to be honest. He kind of compares. I saw his comparison on Twitter. He kind of compares a little more to like AJ Brown with his,
hmm
speed and his size and whatnot. But I don't think that he's a first round pick. Now
Okay.
this is another guy that if he falls to the second round, you need a receiver. Do your licking your chops, hoping that he falls to you because I think he's going to be a good pro.
Dude, like you said before, just because these guys aren't going round one doesn't mean that they're not going to be
Absolutely,
starters. So
absolutely,
this experiment just I just was curious to see what you think.
for sure.
And like you said, this class is so talented that, look at last year with Puka Nacua went fifth round and look what he did. So
Yeah, yep,
just because they're not going first round doesn't mean that they can't come in and be starters or very solid players for their teams. Our last guy, real quick, and that is Troy Franklin. This is another guy that I see a lot in first round mocks. Wide receiver at Oregon,
Oregon.
6'2", 176. Ran a 4.41, 39-inch vert, 10-foot 4-inch broad jump. What do you think?
I don't think that he goes round 1. I think his size kinda hurts him a little bit. He's almost 6'2". He was, I think, 176 pounds. So,
Yep.
pretty skinny, and for only running a 4.4, I mean, 4.41 is still really fast, but,
Yeah.
um, just with this receiving group being as good as it is, I don't see him being a first-round pick. I know a lot of mocks say that he is. I don't think that he'll go there, but
Hmm.
another guy, dude, he absolute playmaker. He
Yep.
in most drafts, he's a first round pick. So just because these guys are so stacked, I do not think that he will be a first round pick.
For sure. Um, I think that kind of leaves of the guys who I think, who I've seen in first round mocks. But I agree with you. I think some of those guys are definitely gonna fall out and go in that second round. I just want to touch base on a couple more guys here before we move on to the quarterbacks, and that's Brendan Rice.
Yeah,
He didn't run as fast as I thought. He definitely did, he definitely was. I think he had a pretty good gauntlet. And that was pretty impressive. But Malik Washington, man, out of Virginia, 5'8.5", 191, ran a 4.47. His vertical, I think it was the best out of all these wide receivers. I could be wrong though. It was 42.5 inches
yeah,
at 5'8".
that's insane. That's insane. That's another guy, dude. That it's the same thing with like Brendan Rice. I mean,
Yeah.
where's is he even going to be a day 2 guy? Because these receivers are
I don't know,
so good.
man.
Like I could honestly see
I,
him fall into day 3. He might be a pick on
could you?
Sunday. I really could, or on Saturday.
Yeah.
You know, and
I wish the draft would be on Saturday,
I
Sunday.
know,
That'd be
dude.
fun.
I wish. Honestly, I wish. But yeah, Malik Washington, that's another guy that's right there with Rice. It's like, what do you
Yep.
want? Do you want, the bigger receiver? It's a little slower, obviously great route technician, or do you want Malik Washington, a little smaller but way more athletic and can really
Yeah.
probably dominate out of that slot position. So it's kind of just pick your poison. But man, like we've been saying, dude, this wide receiver class, we're gonna deep dive into this a little more because
Yep.
there's
For
so
sure.
many guys to talk about. Like we didn't even talk about Roman Wilson or Johnny
I
Wilson
know.
or I
Or Luke
dude,
McCaffrey.
Luke McCaffrey. I really like Zay Weaver from Colorado. I mean, not many people are talking about him. He didn't do much at the combine. I like him a lot, dude. It's endless.
Mhm.
It's absolutely endless. What a freaking stacked class.
Yeah, we might even have to do like a top 10 or something instead of top 5 because,
Yeah,
man,
I think that's what we're gonna have to
it's
do.
a top 5 is gonna be hard. We'll do like a top 5. Obviously, you'll see a top 5 within our top 10, so we'll do that. But
Yeah, yeah.
um,
We're gonna have to
we
do
might
that
have
for
to do
sure.
that. I think we do too. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, moving on now to the quarterbacks, and you know, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jane Daniels. They did not participate on the on-field workouts. It was a little disappointing. I get it. Do they really have to? They're just going to throw out their pro days. At least Caleb Williams and I think Drake May stayed around for the on-field workouts. I don't think Jane Daniels did though. I think he left.
I think you did too. I
Um,
think you're right.
so it was kind of cool seeing those guys out there and interacting with, you know, the wide receivers and being excited for them as well and these other quarterbacks. But man, I know who you're gonna say here, but who was your top quarterback who improved their stock the most?
Michael Penix. I mean, I think a lot of
Yeah,
people, everything you see online, it's all Michael Penix this, Michael Penix that. But
for sure.
even going back to last podcast that we had, I had JJ ahead of Penix, and I think I was just kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much and kind of just falling into that trap. Penix, he went out there and I thought he threw the best out of all the quarterbacks. He passed all the medicals, which is absolutely huge for him, and
Yeah,
he interviewed fantastic. I mean, his interviews were fantastic, including the public one that I listened to. So I think almost out of all the players in this entire combine, I think he put himself back in that first round talk, and that's exactly where he should be because minus that Michigan game, like we've talked about a million times now, he looked like a top 5 pick. So going
yeah,
back to that,
definitely.
I'm glad that he's finally in that conversation again. And yeah, he obviously really impressed me. But who do you have?
Yeah, and we kind of go back to this season. I was just so excited about Penix throughout the whole season, just tuning into every pretty much Washington game,
Absolutely.
and he was probably like my one of my favorite quarterbacks, and I was like, man, I want the Vikings to draft him if we go quarterback. I want the Vikings to draft him if we go quarterback.
Yep.
And he definitely, I thought, was the best thrower out of all the guys.
Yeah.
You could clearly see that on the on-field workouts. You know, JJ McCarthy, he was I think he was kind of what I thought he was going to be, and that was just the inconsistency.
Yeah.
He definitely has the zip,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
He has the solid footwork, dropping back in the pocket. The biggest thing for him is just needs to continue to work on the accuracy,
Yep.
because that was definitely seen when he's throwing to the left side on those out routes. Um, he had a couple nice deep balls, but man, it was nothing in comparison to Penix Jr. So I know JJ, a lot of the talk about him right now is that he's probably going to maybe go in the top 10. And I think that's because teams are just falling in love with the person
Yeah.
and potential that what he could be. So we go back to our top 5 quarterback ratings. I had JJ McCarthy at 4 and Penix at 5. Those guys are so neck and neck for me. It could literally be switched. Um, I like them pretty much both identically, and I'd love either one of them as a Vikings quarterback. Definitely Penix is more ready to play. I think JJ McCarthy could benefit from sitting. Doesn't mean that he couldn't play, but I definitely could see him, benefit from that. But Zach, I just want to touch on this. So you weren't drinking the Kool-Aid though, because you did have Penix at 4 and had McCarthy at 5. So you
Oh,
were
I
on this
did.
pretty much right away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
I
see.
was
I
the
didn't.
one who had
Okay. Okay.
I was the one who had McCarthy at 4 and Penix at 5. So
Oh, okay. See, I thought I had it flipped, but it's a lot like you were saying. I think they're so close right now. Um, that it's hard to, go back and forth with it. But a lot of people were kind of talking that, JJ had such a bad day throwing. I didn't really see that. I thought he was,
yeah, I didn't either.
yeah, I thought he was inconsistent with a couple throws,
Yep.
but I thought he threw a lot of nice balls, and I thought he threw, some decent deep balls too. So I don't think it was is because I didn't watch the quarterback day live. I had to go back and watch
Mhm.
that, and I kind of heard and
Yeah.
saw what it was going on. So going into it, I thought JJ had this horrific day where he was missing on like
Yeah.
almost all his throws, but no, that wasn't the case at all. And then another
Yeah,
thing,
for sure.
going back to the player interviews, is I thought his was very well too. He's another guy, and
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh said the same thing. Is he's an absolute dog. That's all he cares about is winning, and you can see that in his interviews. So I do think a team like the Vikings, they get a guy like JJ in with a team interview, and I think that it's easy to fall in love with a kid like that. Obviously, he's 3 years younger than Penix is, so I think that's going to play a huge factor in it too. And not only that, I know Penix passed everything medically. I do think that's still going to
Yep.
play a factor at the end of the day. And JJ has been healthy his entire career, so that's going to play a big factor in it too. So at the end of the day, it's going to be who prefers what. But as of right now, I do have Penix ahead of JJ, but that does not mean that I think JJ is an absolute turd because that's not the case.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think any of those top 5 guys would be solid players. I still have my thoughts on Bo Nix. I think he did pretty well in his throws too. Um, and then, Spencer Rattler, I thought he looked pretty decent, but
Yeah, yeah,
he'd be a guy that I would maybe stay away from. He's gonna definitely be a guy that would maybe go, I don't know, 3rd, 4th round,
yeah.
and he's gonna be a developmental guy. He's not gonna be a guy that you're gonna rely on to start. You just draft him, see if he can turn into anything.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. I agree with that.
Zach, I know the Vikes and the Raiders are pretty much in the similar position. Out of all these guys, like, what do you? I know you're a huge fan of Jaden Daniels. I just don't know if Jaden Daniels is gonna be there at 3 anymore. I
I
think
don't think he is.
Washington's taking a quarterback no matter what. And I just think that Jaden Daniels now is going, like you said before in our previous mock, you took Jaden Daniels at 2, and I'm completely seeing it now too, because once they brought in Cliff Kingsbury, he just fits that style of that offense more than a guy like Drake May. So who would you like? What do you want the Raiders to do here now in the offseason? Because it's probably not going to be Jaden Daniels. Do you trade up for 3 still if the Patriots to take a guy like May, or what are you doing here?
So yeah, that's a great point because I agree with you. I think Jaden Daniels. Now we're talking about tier quarterbacks here. I think Caleb and Jaden are in their kind of tier of their own. I think, Jaden is pretty far ahead of Drake May, in my opinion. Um,
Uh-huh.
I would not package and trade a bunch of picks for Drake May if the Patriots were
Yeah.
willing to trade out. I don't, especially looking at next year's class, like I think Shador Sanders is a better quarterback prospect than Drake May is. So if you're going to
Hmm.
trade all this, you got to make sure that you get your guy and you're going to have that guy for the next decade plus. And I just think that Drake May, is he going to be a good pro? Probably. But I just
Yeah,
don't think
I think he's be a franchise guy
yeah,
still.
yeah. I just don't think he's worth trading because to get up to 3, I mean, we're talking 2 future first round picks, and then you're gonna have to give up 13 too, and that's just too rich for me. I don't think the Raiders have a good enough roster to make that move. Now, if you go up and get a
Yeah.
guy like Jaden, I think Jaden has potential to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. I really do, as long as he can stay healthy. He's got that slim frame. We'll see if he can play, a full season in the NFL. That's up for debate still. But
Hmm.
for Drake May, I would not do it. I would stay put at 13. I would let the draft just fall to you. These quarterbacks are going to go early. Lewis Riddick heard that JJ McCarthy could be a top 5 pick. We could see a team, trade up for him in that Arizona pick at 4 and get JJ. And then we're going to see these receivers
Yeah.
go. We're going to see Rome's going to go, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison. So I mean, that's another.
Yeah, I
So
think they all go top 10.
yep, we're gonna see Joe Alt in that top 10. So all these guys are gonna fall to you. So you're gonna get your pick at you're gonna get your a lot of these defensive top guys, these top defensive players are gonna fall to you. So I would just sit at 13. And for me, I love Michael Penix. I would be comfortable
Mhm.
taking Michael Penix at 13. I really would. If if Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce sit down with them and think that's our guy, he's a guy that can push the ball down the field. He's a guy that, we already had after AP took over, we had the number 1 defense in the league. If you can get a
Mhm.
guy like Michael Penix that can push the ball down the field to Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams, I mean, that would be awesome to see. And if not, if they don't think that that's the guy, then maybe you get a bridge quarterback and you wait till next year. But I would not trade up. I'm either taking Michael Penix at 13 or I'm taking the best defensive player available. So to me, it's probably Penix, or on the defensive side of the ball, I would love to see us take Byron Murphy, defensive tackle from Texas, if the Vikings don't make that pick at 11.
Yeah, so what do you do if, you get to 13 and Penix and JJ are both gone?
See, that's another thing. Maybe a team like the Denver Broncos at 12 falls in love with Penix because everyone else is off the board, and then you lose out on all those guys. Now, if that's the
Would you
case,
take Bo Nix?
I would not take Bo Nix. To be
Yeah,
honest
I
with
wouldn't
you,
either.
if Bo Nix is even there in the second round, I would not take Bo Nix. I am not sold on Bo Nix at
I'm
all,
sorry.
dude.
I'm just thinking. I hope we can draft. I hope we can watch the draft together this year
Oh, we're
because
watching it together for sure. There's no doubt
I
about it,
can't.
dude.
If Bo
If
Nix
they
is
take
there
Bo
at
Nix at 13,
13,
dude, that's why we're watching it at my house this year because if they take Bo Nix at 13, dude,
oh,
TVs are getting broken, all right? So, so yeah, if Bo Nix goes in the
oh
first round, I'll
man.
be shocked. But if he goes 13, I'm going to be shell shocked. So he,
Well, I hope he does just so I can see a reaction. That's
oh
all.
my God, dude. Oh, I would freak out. That would not be good. Hopefully Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco a little smarter than that. But
Yeah,
if Penix is off the board, let's go defense at 13 and get a stud next to
for
Max
sure.
Crosby.
Yeah. So who are some guys like? Do you think Jimmy G is gonna get cut here? They can save a massive load of the cap. I think it's like 20 million in the 20 million range.
Yep.
Um, Do you think they're going to go out there in the market and, probably, but do you think they're going to go out there and sign someone just to be a potential bridge quarterback, or do you think they have that in AOC?
I honestly I'm not 100% sure what they're gonna do. I don't. So what I would
Yeah.
do is I would not sign a bridge quarterback. We've
Hmm.
tried that with Jimmy G. We got Brian Hoyer in there, both absolute disasters. I would just if it doesn't fall the way you want it to fall, I would roll with AOC for another year. Now AOC finished
Yeah.
the season with 8 touchdowns, no picks. He won some big games. He was part of the game where we scored 63 points on the Chargers. So we can
Hmm.
win with AOC, and he was a rookie last year, a 4th round rookie at that. So we definitely can win with him. But I'm not going to go out there and break the bank and sign a guy like Kirk Cousins or Even
Baker.
yeah, get a guy like Baker for 40 mil or 30 plus mil just doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
I'd rather just wait, be patient, let the draft fall to you, and then next year be aggressive and hopefully go get a Shador or whoever you love next year.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
So
if you go that route, you're probably going to be picking maybe in the top 10 and might or even higher than that. So,
yeah, which could definitely be the case for sure. I just would much rather see us if we're going to be big spenders in free agency, which it sounds like we are going to be. I hope we go after guys like Chris Jones or Patrick
yeah.
Queens or real difference makers on the defensive side of the ball rather than get us a bridge quarterback that's 35, 36 years old that just doesn't really get me too excited. So
Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. Free agency is going to be coming before we know it, and I'm really excited to see all these questions now to be answered. So,
yeah, absolutely.
all right, well, moving on to the offensive line class. So, this offensive line class, man, especially the tackle position,
It's
some
insane.
scouts are saying it's the deepest they've seen in 20 years, and I completely agree because there is a handful of guys that I think are going to be absolute studs here at the next level.
Yeah, and this is another position where it's kind of just pick your poison. Obviously, Joe Alt is probably, the clear-cut number one guy, but I mean, I saw a mock actually, I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was DJ or maybe it was Mel Kiper's second mock. Either way,
Oh yeah, was it
someone had JC
Latham?
Latham at 5.
Yeah, I
Had
think it
him.
was Kuiper.
Okay, was Kuiper? Okay, yeah. Had
Yeah,
him going 5, which I love JC Latham. I think, you know, as a right tackle, I'm not even, this might sound absolutely ridiculous. I think as a rookie, he's a top 5 right tackle in the NFL. He can pass block,
yeah,
he can run, he's huge. He's, 340. I think he weighed in at 340, which was actually lighter than a lot of people thought he was going to, but he moves
mhm.
well. He's powerful, long arms. I think he's an absolute superstar at right tackle. So there's a lot of studs in this offensive line class. And like you said, I mean, this is the best one that we've seen in a long time. So it's kind of like the receiver class where a lot of these guys, might fall a little later because they know that they can get these guys, day 2, day 3, and actually be starters.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you look at the Chargers at 5, they could look for a right tackle because they have Slater, who's a left tackle,
Yep.
and Joe Alt, he's a left tackle. I think that you go and you maybe put a guy in there like Latham or that Talise Fuaga out
Yep.
of Oregon State
People
at right
love him.
tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Joe Alt isn't the first offense tackle taken. Maybe it's one of these guys like Latham or Fuaga.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And that's another position, just speaking on the Raiders real quick, that if if a guy like Joel Alt or a JC Latham falls to you because all these quarterbacks and receivers are going high, I mean, dude, how do you not pull the trigger on that? You got Colton
Yeah, no,
Miller on one side and you got just say like a JC Latham on the other. I mean,
yeah, you'd have your two bookends going
yeah,
forward. That's for sure.
exactly. And just speaking on the offensive tackles again, real quick, how crazy was that Amirius Mims, that offensive tackle from Georgia? Dude,
Hmm.
what a mammoth of a human he is. He looks like Shaq out there. He's
Yeah,
6'8",
he's a big dude.
340 pounds. I think he's got like a 7'2" or a 7'3" wingspan. He ran a 5'07". I mean, yeah, dude, this offensive line class is really special.
Yeah, he's an absolute freak. And I think I had him back in our mock. I can't remember. I think I had him going in the 20 range. It might have been to it might have been the Packers or it could have been the Dolphins. One of those two, I believe. But yeah, I think, oh gosh, man, like he's he's gonna be a stud. And if he goes to the Packers, that's gonna be a tough one.
Oh, for sure. Dude, that would suck so bad if he went to the Packers.
It really would. It
I'd
really
hate that,
would.
but I could
So
definitely see that fit for sure. There's no doubt about it.
yeah. Yeah, my guy here is that Fuaga, just
Yeah.
6'6", 334, ran a 5'13", 32-inch vertical, 9-inch 9 foot 3-inch broad jump. I thought he was probably the most fluid guy out there.
Yeah, I
One of
agree.
the most fluid guys out
He
there
was.
too. And that says a lot because he's pretty known for like
Mauling
power.
guys, yeah. Yep.
Exactly. So, um, he is the guy who impressed me probably the most of the offense tackle position. Joe Alt, I like Joe Alt a lot. Might not be the most athletic offensive tackle, which is okay.
Yep.
He's 6'8", 315. But yeah, his like vert and his broad, well, his broad, I guess his vertical just wasn't up to some of these other guys. It was a 28-inch vertical. But being honest, like it's a vertical. Like I'm looking for, for tackle, I'm looking for more of the movement, how he can move backwards. In low forward too with the pole, and he definitely looked pretty impressive. But I thought I was going to see a little more out of him. I know in one of the drills he kind of had a hard time getting his feet under him, kind of tripped up a couple times. So we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
definitely a first round, probably top 15, no matter what.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I always thought it was weird. Every time I watch the combine, I'm like, why are these guys running 40s? Like,
Yeah,
what's the point of these guys running 40s? Obviously,
yeah,
the
exactly.
10-yard split is what you're looking for when it comes to offensive linemen.
Yeah,
That's a huge number that everyone's looking at. But if a guy runs a 4.9 or a 5.40, it's not
yeah.
like they're
It's like
running.
who cares,
Yeah, they
right?
only can go so many yards past the line of scrimmage anyways. It's like
Exactly.
it's kind of goofy that they do that,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, I Fuaga impressed. I thought um Fashanu, or however you pronounce that name, from Penn State.
Hmm.
He's going into this whole offseason. A lot of people thought that he was for sure the number two offensive tackle behind Joe Alt, and
Yeah.
I thought he ran a 4.51, which is actually moving pretty fast for how big he is. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's another guy that could go number 10 to the Jets. So a lot
Yeah.
of these guys they're going to go. I could see a lot of these going back to back to back. We're going to see a lot of these guys go in the top 20. So I don't know, man. It's
Yeah.
it's a great year for receivers and a fantastic year for offensive linemen. So if your team needs one of those positions, man, you're in luck.
Yeah. Definitely. Just touching it based on the interior positions, the centers and guards. I think one guy that kind of stood out to me was Jackson Powers Johnson, man. He
Yeah.
is 6'3", 334, and just the way he moved side to side, I was really impressed with all his on-field work too. Um, he had a 32-inch vertical, which was pretty surprising for that size. So yeah, he was definitely a guy that I was most intrigued with out of all the interior offensive linemen at the combine.
Yeah, he's a guy that, I mean, he's only 21 years old still. You see a lot of mock drafts with him in the first round, which is insane for a center to go first round. Obviously, Bradbury did it with the Vikes, but
Yeah,
overall it's pretty rare. So he definitely has the potential and the skill set to go in the first round. But with all these other guys and receivers and all these guys that are projected to go, do you think that he's a first round pick?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
I think he's the clear cut number one center
yeah,
in this draft. Maybe a guy like Zach Frazier too out of West Virginia or Grant Barton out of Duke could maybe push that a little bit.
yeah,
But man, just the way he handled himself at the Senior Bowl, he locked down Sweat,
yeah. He's
and he
exactly.
was just locking guys left and right. So I think teams are going to really fall in love with just his overall tape. I mean, he won the best interior offensive lineman award in college last year.
Yeah,
So I think he's definitely going to be a first round pick when it's all said and done.
yeah. And I totally agree with you too. I think he's going to be a first round pick too. You'll probably go somewhere in after pick 20 or something. But whoever gets
Yeah,
him,
for sure.
you're getting your center for the next 10 plus years, because he's like I said, he's only 21 and he's dominated, since he took over that starting role at Oregon. So he's a
Yeah, I think
fantastic player.
I had him going to the Texans in our first mock. So I think that is a perfect
That is
range
a
for him
perfect
right in the
range for him.
20s.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
I just wanted to touch base on before we move on to our next topic. Just another record was broke for the offensive lineman. So this wasn't a vertical for every position, but an offensive line record, and that was Garrett Greenfield out of South Dakota State, so FCS small school guy.
Hmm.
He had a vertical of a 38, so 38 and a half inch vertical, and broke the record for the most or the best vertical all time for an
That's insane.
offensive lineman.
That's so high.
It is, yeah. So that was really impressive. I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know much about this player, but
Yeah.
that is an impressive measurement. So
Yeah, and there was another guy that they kinda hyped up a lot. You probably saw him too, Crum. He's an offensive lineman from Wyoming. He had that
Hmm.
long blonde, like, mullet hair. He really
Yeah,
he
yeah,
really
that's
had a
right.
good day too, and he interviewed really well too. He seems like a really cool kid, and,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he's another guy that you're probably gonna get, day 2, day 3, and you're probably gonna be able to start him because he looked the part.
All right, so moving on now to our next topic, and that is our top five running back position. Zach, since this episode's getting a little long, maybe we won't dive into great detail on each guy, but we can just go through our top five real quick.
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you want me just to rattle off my top 5?
Let's do one by one. So let's do
Okay,
one,
I like it.
and then we'll alternate like that.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds
who's
good.
your top guy?
So my number one running back is Braylon Allen, running back out of Wisconsin, 6'2", 240 pounds. I think he's the youngest player in this draft, just turned 20, but a guy, he's built like Derrick Henry. He's an absolute freak. You think 240 pounds, he's got a little, little fat on him, but he's built like a brick shit house. So
Yeah, he's an absolute stud, man.
he's an absolute tank. So yeah, he's my number one. How about you?
Okay, like it. My number one is gonna be Jalen Wright, running back out of Tennessee.
Nice.
Talked about him in the last podcast or last episode. Just his ability. I think he can end up being a workhorse type back.
Yep.
Very physical runner who combines that with breakaway speed in open field. Had a 7.4 average for rushing yards per carry. So I think teams are just gonna love with it or fall in love with him. Um, and he also, I think, is the best pass blocking running back in this class.
Yeah, I mean, he's in my top 5 too, and, a lot of guys, a lot of teams look at, the wear and tear at the running back position when they take these guys, and Jalen Wright doesn't have a lot of wear and tear, so I think a lot of teams will like that too, so,
Definitely.
moving on to my number 2, Trey Benson, FSU, 6 foot, 216 pounds. That 4.39 at the combine really shocked me, still only 21 years
Mhm.
old. He's at 900 yards back-to-back seasons, but, this past year he had 14 touchdowns. So he's a natural pass catcher, out of the backfield, so I think he can be a 3-down back at the next level, and, he's also really, really good at lowering his pads too. He'll run someone over. So I like him a lot
Yeah,
too.
for sure. Yeah, he is. Well, I won't say where he's on my list. We'll get to that in a second. But my second guy is gonna be Jonathan Brooks,
Nice.
run back out of Texas. If he had just a tremendous year, I thought, at Texas. He's a pretty elusive back, has the ability to catch out of the backfield as well. He rushed for 1,139 yards with 10 rushing touchdowns this past season with a 6.1 yards per carry average. He also caught 25 balls for 286 yards and one receiving touchdown. So I was pretty impressed watching Brooks all season. He was probably one of my favorite. He was one of my favorite backs. And then Jalen Wright just has emerged this past couple months for me, going back and watching some of his games.
Yeah, and actually, Jonathan Brooks is my number 3 back on here. I thought he did really
Okay.
good, taking over for Bijan Robinson. He obviously looked the part, ran a 4.45, and he probably has the best, stop and start. He's got elite stop and start, which is, kind of just going back to Bijan Robinson. I mean, that's what Bijan's kind of known for, is that stop and start and, his agility and stuff. So Jonathan Brooks definitely looks the part as a number 1 running back at the next level.
Yeah. So my number three guy is Braylon Allen. And if we did this a little earlier, he could have been my number one guy, but he's not a pig, a big, powerful back who has the ability to accelerate in space. I just love the one thing I love is how young he is. He's only 20 years old. He's gonna be 20. He's pretty much his whole rookie year. I think he just turned
January.
20 here, like in January. Yeah,
Yeah.
so he's gonna be pretty much his whole rookie year. In his 3 seasons at Wisconsin, he rushed for a total of 3,494 yards, 35 rushing touchdowns with a 5.9 average per carry. So yeah, I like Allen a lot. I definitely think he is going to be an absolute just tank at the next level.
Yep, same here. Yeah, he was my number 1, and another thing about him is he caught 28 balls last year, so that's a guy that you look at him, you don't think that he's gonna catch the ball out of the backfield, but, he really can,
Yeah.
so he's definitely a 3
Yeah,
down back.
he has he's like you said, his ability to catch screen passes is something that I think he excels at. So
Yeah. Number 4 on my list is Jalen Wright. You kinda just talked about him, that 4.38. I had to put him in my top 5. You got him at
Yeah.
1, he's at 4 now for me. He's probably gonna move up when it's all said and done from even, number 4.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the 14 touchdowns the last 2 seasons, the 7.4 average this past year, absolute beast. Yeah, he's consistently falling forward. That's a guy that, if you hit him in the backfield, you're not gonna tackle him for a loss. He's still gonna try to get a yard or 2, he just doesn't go down easy. So, with him being, 5'10", 210 pounds, you think that's gonna be easy to make that tackle? Well, it's definitely not, and he has that speed to take it to the house every time he touches the ball. So, big fan of him. He's at number 4, but I will not be surprised if he moves up when it's all said and done.
Yeah, so my number 4 guy is Blake Corum out of Michigan. He's a very compact back who has great vision and is pretty slippery in tight areas or tight spaces, making him pretty difficult to tackle. Man, his career at Michigan is unbelievable.
Unbelievable, yep.
So during his senior year, he rushed for 1,240 yards. He had 27 rushing touchdowns this season. I
That's
don't think I
insane.
realized that, but every single game I was watching Blake Corum playing, he seemed like he was getting like 2 to 3 rushing touchdowns a game, so that makes sense.
Yep.
His career average, or this past season, his average was a 4.8 average yard per carry. He also had 16 receptions for 117 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. So I definitely think, he's like more of a smaller guy. I think he's like 5'8", but man, he had a very impressive day on the bench press too. I think he benched like in the upper 20s.
That's crazy for his
I
size.
think it was like
Super impressive.
28 or 27, like 27 to 29 in that range. So he's a pretty powerful dude.
Yeah, super impressive. I didn't have him, in my top 5, and the only
Mhm.
reason why I didn't was because of that wear and tear at college. They
Yeah,
used him
I understand for
so
sure.
much. I mean, but he's right there, and he's probably gonna be a day 2 pick. I think, he could be, round 3 type of guy, and, he just knows how to win. So, a lot of teams are going to fall in love with that. But my number 5 might be a little shocker to some people is Marshawn Lloyd, running back out of USC. He really had
Okay.
a good combine, 4.46. Obviously, I watched a ton of USC games with Caleb Williams, and in a pass heavy offense, he had 18 rushing touchdowns last year and a 7.1 average. So I really
Yeah.
like what he brings. He's 220 pounds, but he still has the speed. Like I said, he's around that 4.46. So I like him a lot. I think he can be a 3 down back at the next level too. And this is a guy that you're probably going to get the last day of the draft. And you get him in the last day of the draft, you're going to be really happy because he's really going to compete for that starting job no matter what team he goes to. So I like him a lot. Marshawn Lloyd, USC.
Yeah, I like his tape a lot too. And watching USC games, he definitely stood out to me. So my number 5 guy is Bucky Irving. So this is a
Nice.
guy, I've kind of went back and forth. I thought about having Trey Benson here, but I just went with Irving. So, I talked about Irving before. I just think he's going to be a dual threat back who can, you know, catch and run. And like it showed, like the past season, he had 56 receptions for 413 receiving yards, and he also had 1,180 rushing yards with a 6.3 rushing yard average per carry, with 13 total touchdowns on the year, um, 11 rushing and 2 passing. So he's my number 5 guy. But like I said, maybe that will change towards the draft. Maybe that Trey Benson finds his way into my top 5 because, like I said before, I was thinking of putting him there at that number 5 spot.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, it's gonna be a lot of just pick your poison with these guys because I think all these guys are just so closely together when it comes to rankings and stuff that, well, I'm really curious to see how this all plays out because, I wouldn't be surprised to see Blake Corum be the first running back off the board, or I wouldn't be surprised if, Jalen Wright's the number 1 running back off the board. So there's definitely not a clear-cut number 1 guy, so it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what happens.
Sure. Like you said, I think a lot of these guys are going to be they could be plug and play starters that we all mentioned. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so yeah, just kind of recapping, my top 5 was Jalen Wright, running back out of Tennessee, Jonathan Brooks, running back out of Texas, Braylon Allen, running back out of Wisconsin, Blake Corum, running back out of Michigan, and then Bucky Irving, running back out of Oregon, previously from the Minnesota Gophers.
Yes, sir. In my 5, Braylon Allen, he was my number 1 out of Wisconsin. Trey Benson, number 2 out of Florida State. Jonathan Brooks, number 3 out of Texas. Jalen Wright, number 4 out of Tennessee. And Marshawn Lloyd, number 5 out of USC.
Heck of a list.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm excited to see what happens because we'll probably do one more final position rankings, and I'm kind of
Oh
curious
yeah.
to see how this changes
Yep.
from now to then. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, because we'll see also we'll have some pro day data to put in there too.
Yep,
But
yep.
yeah, we'll definitely do a final rankings episode later on, maybe in April as the draft approaches. So we'll kind of moving on to the next topic. You know, NFL free agency is upcoming here. So just to start off though, the franchise tag period actually ends here on March 5th, which is on Tuesday at 3 p.m. So guys who don't receive the tag will be just going right to free agency unless they get an extension done before the free agency period happens. And then the NFL tampering period, which is going to be absolutely insane, and that'll happen on March 11th through March 13th, leading up to the new league year, which will start on the 13th, which is a Wednesday, and that'll start at 3 p.m. Central Time.
Yeah, dude, I cannot wait. March 11th, a week from when you guys are listening to this, it is absolutely insane. All hell will break loose. That's usually when players will start obviously talking with teams and usually have some deals in place. And then March 13th, they're just kind of finalizing it all. So a week from now, it's going to be absolutely mayhem. And make sure you guys hit that bell icon, get notified when new episodes drop.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at NapTime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.